Greetings everyone, and I have a cat on my arm again, which means I can't really edit what I just read, so I'm just going to keep reading and edit later when she decides to move away and I can use my right hand again for more than just holding up the phone I'm reading from. This is episode 17 of Fanfic Read Through. Ghost Crime, chapter 17. Enjoy. Time passed very slowly as the three women took in turn to walk down the street the killer was most likely to go down to attack them. Danny floated behind them, invisible and on high alert. I am starting to doubt this plan, whispered Sam, as it was her turn to walk down the street for a third time. Me too, confided Danny, his eyes going to every little thing that moved. They reached the other side, and Agent Prentice started to walk, the sound of her heels muffled in the fog. She had a less confident walk than Sam had, and made sure to stop outside the door leading to the victim's apartment, adjusting her clothes and playing the role of an unsuspecting woman. At first, Danny had thought he'd imagined the shiver going up his spine, but then he saw his breath in front of him, and all his instincts screamed at him. He didn't know why he did, he just acted, taking Prentice's hand and pulling her to the side, just as Jero became visible, sword lashing out, cutting Prentice's arm instead of her throat. Making himself tangible, Danny dove into the agent, gripping at the dark shadow possessing her. He flew out, visible again, a handful of shadow in his hands. However, this time Jero twisted around, swiping with the sword, forcing Danny to let go of the shadow, or else lose a hand. Jero didn't stop her attack there. She went after Danny with vengeance, forcing him to dodge and back up till he found a wall against his back, sword coming right at his face. Flares of green light shot through the air, hitting Agent Jero, forcing her away from Danny. He glanced to the shooter, seeing Rossi standing with a phantom plasma gun in his hands, hard eyes on his agent, Tucker and Sam by his side. Thanks, shouted Danny back as he went for grabbing Jero's sword hand. He missed and turned his movement into hitting her in the chest instead. The possessed agent took the hit and struck out hard with the sheath of the cane, taking Danny over the ear, sending him to the ground, stars dancing in his vision, a ringing sound drowning out the other's noise in the street. Another streak of green light flew past, stopping Jero from finishing the dazed ghost off. Her red eyes turned to the shooter, landing on Luke and Dr. Lewis, both having their phantom guns out, Luke's smoking. Jero went for Elvis, swinging the sword up in an arc. The BAU agent surprised everyone by being able to dodge the insanely fast sword, but then he saw the swipe of the sheath coming down on Luke's neck, making him scream in pain as he went down. Dr. Lewis fired her gun, forcing the possessed agent to take a step back, bringing her attention to her. "Run!" screamed Danny. He didn't know when he'd gotten his feet back under him, or when he decided to fly straight at Jero's open back. As soon as she realized he was coming for her, he went intangible and flew straight into the agent. Instead of coming out, gripping the shadow of the killer, Danny stayed in Jero's body, forcing his will upon hers and that of the killer, halting the movement. You could see everything Jero was seeing, feel everything she felt, and fight like she did against the killer. Luke and Dr. Lewis took advantage of Jero's stillness. Getting an arm around Luke, Dr. Lewis half dragged him away from the possessed friend and towards the others. Danny could taste fear oozing from them, sickly sweet, and he wanted more. Getting the sour taste of malice as a thought struck him, followed by the bitter taste of pain, Jero's pain. And then he was thrown out of her, striking the ground hard, coming up on his feet again, the sweet taste still in his mouth. Jero shook her head, and for a moment Danny could see her normal blue eyes, and then they were red again, and she came at him, sword raised. Danny fired a ghost ray, forcing Jero to dodge, giving him a chance to come in close. Like the other times Danny had fought the ghost, he weaved in and out of Jero's reach, taking the hit from the sheath rather than that of the sword, utilizing all his martial arts training and small advantages he had at his disposal. Whenever he went down, the agents fired a warning shot, giving Danny a chance to get back up. However, Jero turned her attention towards the shooter, and Danny found himself getting back up, panic in his throat as he fired a ghost ray to get Jero's attention back on him. She kept getting in close to Danny, and he found out that she, unlike the other guy the ghost had possessed, was much more agile and much faster. He wasn't expecting her to use martial arts as much as she did. The sheath of the sword was coming down at him like a baton, forcing him towards the sword, and when he dodged, she kicked, sending Danny flying into the rest of the group, hitting Tucker, and both of them went down with cries of pain. The agent started firing. "Get up, Danny!" shrieked Sam as she fired the phantom peeler. Tucker whimpered under Danny. Licking his lips, Danny quivered with energy. Getting off Tucker, he turned around, eyes glowing bright green, and he flew straight for Jerome. Gliding past her, he avoided her attacks. As the agents laid down cover fire, he jumped into the agent again, gripping at the malice coming out of the ghost and clawing at it. The ghost forced Danny out, but this time he was gripping more than a handful of shadows and got his feet planted on the ground, pulling at it. Jerome turned, and with inhuman speed she was in front of Danny, the sword coming down at his face. He flinched, the blade only grazing the tip of his nose, tugging at his powers as it did. Letting go of the shadow, Danny went in close. Gripping the hand holding the sheath, he twisted and threw Agent Giro over his shoulder, and backed up as she came to her feet. "There is no way that tactic is going to work," said Rossi, barely more than 5 feet up behind Danny, the glow of his phantom plasma gun illuminating Giro's face as she flew towards them. Time seemed to slow down the moment Danny straightened from having thrown Giro. The sword absorbs power, he thought, taking a step back. "I can get the shadow out, but I can't get it to release her." Another step. "The sword is double-edged." He stopped and heard Rossi talk. "Then what if I cut the shadow with the sword?" Danny took a deep breath. "Cover your ear!" shouted Sam, recognizing the action. No one got their hands up in time as Danny released his ghostly wail, the sound waves visible to the human eye. Giro was forced to take a step back as the first wave hit her. She wavered for a moment and then leaned forward, taking another step towards them. Danny kept going, raising the pitch of his wail. Glass windows shattered around them. The fog that had obscured most things lessened before disappearing completely. Giro was almost close enough to strike them when she went down on one knee, dropping the sheath and bringing her free hand up to her head. "Please, hold on just a little longer," thought Danny, feeling his power drain as he kept up the wail. The shadows darkened on the possessed agent and began seeping out like black fire in a hard wind. She dropped the sword and brought her other hand up to her head, covering her bleeding ears. The shadow grew until it started to lose its grip on the agent. Danny stopped his wail and dove for the sword. He rolled up, sword in hand, and sliced the shadow before it could return to Agent Giro, letting out a shriek as it was absorbed into its own blade, filling out the ornate carvings. End of chapter 17.